They say the mind is like a muscle, use it or lose it. But what they don't tell you is this. Like any muscle, the mind also needs rest, renewal, and meaningful exercise, not just busy work. See, there's this quiet fear many of us carry as we get older, that we'll start to forget names, place words, lose track of memories we've cherished for a lifetime. I've felt that fear too. And yes, I've had moments when a familiar name danced just out of reach, or I walked into a room only to forget why. But what I've also learned through the years, the changes, the trials and triumphs, is that the mind doesn't have to slip into silence. It can stay alive, awake, curious, even joyful. In fact, some of the most mentally sharp people I've ever known are in their 70s, 80s, even 90s, not because they're doing puzzles all day, not because they memorize long strings of facts, but because they stay engaged, because they remain curious, because they continue to live with intention. And that's what I want to talk about today. This isn't about medical advice. This isn't a checklist from a clinic. This is wisdom gathered from a life well lived. From days spent learning, unlearning, adapting, and awakening. From watching dear friends grow older with grace and learning from them too. So if you've ever worried about your mind growing dull with age, if you've wondered how to stay sharp even as the body slows, this is for you. Let's talk about what really keeps the mind alive. Not from experts in lab coats, but from someone who's walked the road and is still walking it. Let's begin. The world never stops changing, and neither should we. One of the greatest misconceptions about aging is the belief that our best years of learning are behind us. But I've come to see it differently. In fact, the older I get, the more I realize that learning isn't just for the young. It's for the curious, and curiosity has no expiration date. Routine is comforting, yes, but left unchecked, it becomes a cage. Watching the same shows, reading the same headlines, repeating the same thoughts. Slowly, the mind begins to dim, not from age, but from lack of challenge. But the moment I step outside of that routine, even in the smallest way, something shifts. I feel a spark, a lift, a stirring of something awake inside me. I remember the first time I learned to use a smartphone. I was well into my 70s. It frustrated me, sure. The buttons were too small, the screens moved too fast. But every time I mastered something, sending a message, sharing a photo, it felt like a triumph, a reminder that my mind was still growing. Try something new, no matter how small. Maybe it's a new recipe that uses spices you've never heard of. Maybe it's watching a documentary about a place you've never visited. Maybe it's sitting beside your grandchild and asking them genuinely how the app on their phone works. You'll feel a little out of place, a little slow, maybe even a little silly, and that's perfectly okay. Because learning is less about getting it right and more about showing up. Stretching your mind, even just a bit, keeps the pathways flexible, keeps the spark alive. When you challenge your brain, it lights up. It says, oh, you still need me. And that feeling, that little flicker of growth, it's a gift. You don't have to enroll in a course or read encyclopedias. Just choose to stay engaged. Learn something new every week, or even every day. It doesn't have to be big, just new. Because when you keep learning, you keep living fully. And that's how we stay not just sharp, but awake, aware, and wonderfully alive. We underestimate the power of a good conversation. In a world full of notifications and one-word replies, real conversation can feel like a lost art. But it's one of the greatest tools we have to keep our minds sharp and our hearts full. Not the surface stuff, not the weather updates or the rehearsed greetings. I'm talking about the kind of conversations that make you pause, the ones that open up memories, laughter, reflection, the ones that go beyond how are you and into how are you really. When I speak with someone face to face or even voice to voice, I notice something shift in me. I become more present. I listen more closely. My mind starts firing off memories, comparisons, emotions. It's like waking up an engine that hasn't run in a while. You see, conversation does more than fill time. It exercises the brain in remarkable ways. When you speak, you recall words. You form thoughts. You reflect on past experiences. You adapt in real time to someone else's perspective. That's a workout. One far more meaningful than any crossword puzzle. Some of the sharpest elders I know have one thing in common. They talk, they tell stories, they ask questions, they show up for others in small, steady ways. I remember an old friend named Ruth. She lived 2 doors down. Every Sunday, we'd sit on her porch, sip tea, and talk about everything. Our childhoods, old loves, favorite books, what we learned the hard way. Those talks weren't just a joy, they were medicine for both of us. Pick up the phone, even if it's just to say hello. Call your sibling, reach out to a friend you've lost touch with. Sit beside someone at a gathering and ask them something deeper than usual. Or if you can't do that, write. Write letters. Not emails, not texts. Actual pen-to-paper letters. Tell someone what they've meant to you. Ask them a question about their life. Remind them they're not alone. Because you aren't alone either. Human connection keeps the soul anchored, and it keeps the mind agile. In every conversation, you're forming bridges. Between hearts, yes, but also between neurons. Silence has its place. It can be peaceful, even healing. But connection? That's where we stay alive inside. So speak, share, listen. Not just to keep your mind sharp, but to keep your spirit connected to what makes life truly worth living. Journaling isn't just for teenagers pouring their hearts into notebooks. It's for anyone who wants to clear the fog in their mind and make sense of the world and themselves. At this age, I've come to believe that writing is one of the kindest things we can do for our minds. When you sit down with a pen and a quiet moment, something incredible happens. Your thoughts begin to line up. All the noise and clutter, the little worries and feelings that buzz just under the surface, suddenly have a place to land. You begin to notice patterns. You remember details. You slow down long enough to ask yourself questions that matter. It's not about crafting perfect sentences. Forget spelling, punctuation, grammar. No one is grading this. What matters is that the page listens. The paper doesn't interrupt you. It doesn't rush you, it simply receives. Start simple. Write about what you did today, what you saw out the window, what made you smile, what's been weighing on your heart. Some days, I'll write about my garden, other days about a memory from childhood that bubbled up out of nowhere. And then there are the days when I just write what I don't understand yet, questions I'm still living, like why some friendships fade, or why certain people come to mind after decades of silence, or what it means to leave a legacy. These aren't answers to memorize. They're doorways to understanding yourself better. I keep old journals on my shelf. Sometimes I flip through them and laugh at what once felt enormous. Other times I tear up reading about moments I forgot I lived through. Each entry is a thread in the fabric of my life. Each one says, I was here. I felt this. I survived this. When you write regularly, your mind grows sharper, not just from remembering, but from reflecting. You train yourself to see the meaning in things. You learn to pause before reacting. You become your own witness and your own companion. You don't need a leather-bound book or a fancy fountain pen. A spiral notebook and a quiet corner will do. You don't even need to write long pages. Sometimes a few lines will carry the whole weight of your day. The important thing is to keep writing, to stay in conversation with yourself, to honor your experiences by giving them space to breathe. Because every time you put pen to paper, you're reminding your mind, I'm still here, I'm still learning, I'm still alive, and paying attention. Mental sharpness isn't about pushing yourself to exhaustion. It's not about doing brain teasers until your head hurts, or turning your retirement into a checklist of intellectual achievements. No, It's much simpler and far more humane than that. Mental sharpness is about challenges. Gentle challenge, intentional challenge, the kind that nudges you just outside your comfort zone without throwing you into chaos. When you give your brain something new to consider, even something tiny, you're telling it, you still matter, I still need you. And the mind, like the heart, likes to feel needed. Try brushing your teeth with your non-dominant hand. The first time you do it, it'll feel awkward, clumsy even. But that's the point. Your brain has to pay attention. It has to wake up. What once was automatic suddenly becomes something you have to think through. And that's a form of mental exercise. Or try learning one new word a day. Not a fancy one necessarily, just something new. Maybe it's a word your grandchild uses that you don't understand. Maybe it's a term from a book you're reading. Write it down. Say it aloud. Use it in a sentence. See how long it takes before it sticks. I also love trying to recall things from years past, not out of nostalgia, but for the challenge. Can I still name all my elementary school teachers? The street names in the neighborhood where I grew up? The smell of my mother's favorite perfume? Every one of those exercises gives my mind something to chew on. Because the truth is, the brain wants to work. It was built for growth, and growth doesn't stop because we've turned 60 or 80 or 90. In fact, I believe we need that kind of stimulation more as we age, not less. But here's the secret. It doesn't have to be hard. This isn't about performance, it's about presence. You don't need to enroll in a class or win trivia night. You just need to engage, switch up your routine. Use your brain in a slightly different way today than you did yesterday. Even cooking a new dish can be a challenge. Reading a book outside your usual genre, watching a documentary on something you know nothing about. It's all fuel for your brain. The goal isn't to become a genius, it's to stay awake, to stay curious, to stay in conversation with the world around you. And every time you stretch that mental muscle, just a little, it gets stronger, more flexible, more resilient. So don't shy away from the unfamiliar, embrace it gently, because every small challenge is a quiet investment in your future self. Curiosity doesn't retire. In fact, I'd argue that it becomes even more important the older we get. When we're children, curiosity is second nature. We ask why about everything. We turn over rocks to see what's underneath. We stare at clouds and wonder if they look more like ships or dragons. But somewhere along the way, we begin to feel like we're supposed to know everything. We stop asking questions. We settle into the comfort of the known. But let me tell you something I've learned. Curiosity is what keeps us truly young. Not the absence of wrinkles, not the speed of our steps, but the willingness to wonder. Every time you let yourself be curious, something inside your mind wakes up. It stretches, it leans forward, it takes notice. I'll give you an example. There's an old tree a few blocks from my house. Its trunk gnarled, branches reaching wide like arms opening to the sky. I've passed it for years. And one day, I stopped and asked myself, how long has that tree been here? What has it seen? What storms has it stood through? That small moment of curiosity led me to talk with a neighbor who told me it had been planted during her parents' childhood. I ended up spending the afternoon reading about the history of our neighborhood, all because I wondered. That's the thing. Curiosity isn't about having answers. It's about having questions, good questions, new questions. Why do birds fly in that V formation? What's it like to grow up now compared to the 1940s? How do smartphones actually work? Why do we remember some things so vividly and forget others entirely? Don't be embarrassed to ask. I ask my grandchildren questions all the time, and let me tell you, they light up when they get to teach me something. Being curious invites connection. It invites learning, and it keeps your brain from growing stiff with routine. It also keeps your spirit nimble, because when you remain open to discovering new things, you're saying to the world, I'm still engaged, I'm still alive, I'm still becoming. There's a beautiful humility in curiosity, a quiet acknowledgement that there is always more to learn, more to notice, more to feel. So don't stop wondering. Don't stop asking. Read about the stars. Watch a documentary on a country you'll never visit. Learn the name of a flower in your yard you've seen for years but never identified. Your brain doesn't need constant stimulation. It needs meaningful engagement. And curiosity is the bridge. Because where curiosity lives, stagnation doesn't stand a chance. It took me a long time to realize that the mind and body are not separate. For most of my younger years, I treated them like two different things. My brain for thinking, my body for doing. I assumed if my brain was sharp, I could power through whatever my body was feeling. But as I've grown older, I've come to understand the brain doesn't live in isolation. It depends on the body. It is the body. And when your body is depleted, neglected, or worn down, your mind feels it too. You don't need a perfect diet or a gym membership. You just need presence, consciousness, care. Eat well, not for weight or image, but for energy, for clarity, for nourishment. Hydration might sound simple, even trivial, but drinking enough water each day can transform how your brain functions. You think better, remember better, even your mood lifts. I carry a glass with me now, like it's sacred, and, in a way, it is. Movement matters too. Not marathons or intense workouts, just movement. Walk around the block, stretch when you wake up, breathe deeply while you sit by the window. Let your joints feel used, your lungs expand, your blood circulate. There are mornings when I feel stiff, tired, old, the kind of tired that makes you want to sit in silence and not move for hours. And there's a time for rest, yes, but I've found that if I move my body even just a little, my mind wakes up too. Sometimes all it takes is 10 minutes of walking or watering the garden or swaying gently to music from the past. These small acts remind the body and the brain that you're still in motion, still connected, still alive. Rest, too, is nourishment. Sleep is when the mind does its repair work. It files away memories. It clears out emotional residue. And so I protect my sleep now like I protect my peace. I turn off screens. I keep my room cool. I let myself wind down slowly. We talk so much about keeping the mind sharp, but the sharpest minds I know belong to people who respect the body that carries that mind around each day. So take care of your body, not for vanity, but for vitality, for presence, for mental clarity. Eat food that makes you feel nourished. Drink water like it's medicine. Move like it's prayer. Rest like it's a right, not a reward. Because your brain, your beautiful, wise, capable brain, needs that care. And when your body feels alive, your mind glows right alongside it. When we talk about staying mentally sharp, we often focus on what we need to do. Learn something new, get moving, engage the brain. And yes, activity matters. But over time, I've come to see that one of the most powerful things you can do for your mind is nothing at all. Not sleep, necessarily, though good sleep is important. I mean stillness, rest of a different kind. The kind that doesn't just repair the body, but clears the mind. The kind of rest that makes space for awareness, reflection, and clarity. True rest doesn't happen when you collapse into a chair with the television blaring. That's a distraction. That's white noise for the brain. Intentional rest is different. It's quiet, it's deliberate. It's choosing to sit with yourself without rushing off to the next thing. It's allowing the swirl of thoughts to settle like snow in a shaken globe. I've made it a habit now. 10 minutes each day, sometimes in the morning, sometimes before bed. I sit in a spot where the light comes in just right, and I breathe. No agenda, no judgment, just stillness. Some days I reflect. Other days I simply watch my thoughts drift by, like clouds across a still sky. And here's what I've found. Some of my clearest thoughts come after silence, not during effort, but after ease. It's in the quiet that old memories return with clarity. Those emotions reveal their roots, that solutions to problems rise gently to the surface. We live in a world that worships hustle. Even in old age, we're told to stay productive, but your worth isn't tied to motion. You're allowed to pause, to be, to breathe. Stillness isn't laziness, it's nourishment. It's in moments of quiet that we learn to hear ourselves again. Our inner wisdom, our intuition, that gentle voice that often gets drowned out in the noise of doing. Try it. Find a corner of your home or your day where silence can exist. Sit in your garden, light a candle, close your eyes, say a quiet prayer, or simply listen to your own breath, steady and soft. You don't need to meditate perfectly. You just need to be present. The clarity will come, not by force, but by invitation. And the more often you return to that stillness, the more you'll notice your mind becoming clearer, quieter, more focused. So give yourself the gift of quiet, even just 10 minutes a day, because in that silence, your mind gets to breathe. And when it breathes, oh, how it blooms. One of the most beautiful things I've discovered about aging is that creativity doesn't fade with time. It just changes shape. It softens, it deepens, and it waits patiently for you to make space for it again. There's a myth that creativity belongs to the young, to the bold, the trained, the gifted, but the truth is, we are born creative, and that part of us never disappears. It may grow quieter, but it doesn't vanish. It just waits for an invitation. When you create something, anything, you're telling your mind, we're still exploring, we're still imagining, we're still alive. Draw, sing, bake, knit, write a letter, tell a story no one else knows but you. It doesn't have to be good, doesn't have to be shared, it just has to be yours. There's something sacred about making something from nothing, taking a blank page and putting down words, taking flour and eggs and turning them into something warm and fragrant, taking a memory and stitching it into a quilt, or humming a melody that reminds you of someone you love. Creativity is more than art. It's presence. It's engagement. It's a dialogue between you and life itself. I remember picking up a paintbrush after nearly 5 decades of leaving it behind. My hands were less steady than they once were, and the colors didn't land exactly where I meant them to. But for those few hours, I was somewhere else entirely, lost in color, in feeling, in thought. And when I finished, I wasn't proud of the result. I was proud that I had shown up, because creativity isn't about the outcome. It's about the act of expression. And the mind lights up when you express yourself. It accesses areas that routine can't reach. It builds new connections. It wakes up the imaginative part of your brain that's been quietly waiting to play again. Even telling a story, especially to someone younger, is an act of creation. You're shaping a memory, giving it life beyond your own experience. And in doing so, you're not only keeping your mind sharp, you're preserving a piece of yourself. Don't worry about doing it right. Worry about doing it at all. Write that poem you never finished. Sing the song that reminds you of your first love. Try a new recipe and see what happens. Rearrange your furniture. Plant something. Color outside the lines, literally or metaphorically. Your creativity doesn't need to be useful. It just needs to be true. Because every time you create, you remind yourself and the world that there is still more within you. Still more to say, more to feel, more to become. And that spark, that creative flicker, it keeps the mind young no matter how many years have passed. There comes a point in life where you begin to look back more often than you look forward. And at first that can feel bittersweet, like you're flipping through pages of a story that's nearly done. But what I've come to learn is this: memory isn't just a place to visit for comfort, it's a teacher. And if we return to our memories with fresh eyes, they offer something far more powerful than nostalgia. They offer wisdom. I used to flip through photo albums just to remember the faces, the places, the smiles frozen in time. But now, I ask different questions when I revisit those moments. I don't just remember what happened. I reflect on who I was, what I felt, what I didn't yet understand. There's an old letter I keep in a drawer. It's from someone I once loved deeply, long before life got complicated. I used to read it to feel the ache of youth. But these days, I read it with gratitude for the love I experienced, even if it didn't last, for the lessons I didn't know I was learning at the time. You see, when you reflect on your life with intention, you start to notice the patterns, the turning points, the quiet resilience that carried you through. You begin to appreciate the hard chapters, not because they were easy, but because they shaped who you've become. Memory is not just about holding on, it's about drawing meaning. It's about taking the past and allowing it to guide you gently into the present. Tell your stories out loud, especially to those who've never heard them. Children, grandchildren, friends who've come into your life late. Don't just share the polished versions. Share the messy ones too, the honest ones, the real ones. That's where the power is. And when you do look back, don't just reminisce, analyze. Ask yourself, what did I learn from that season of my life? What strength did I discover I had? What mistakes did I make, and how did they teach me something I still carry today? There is a difference between getting stuck in the past and gathering insight from it. When we use memory as a classroom, we stay mentally engaged, we reflect, we grow, and in that process, we keep our minds alive, not stuck in what was, but awakened to what still is. So go ahead, dust off the old albums, read those faded journals, revisit the places that made you, but do it with open eyes and a curious heart. Because your past isn't just where you came from. It's the soil your present mind still grows in. If there's one quality I've found to be more powerful than any brain exercise or vitamin, it's this: open. More than puzzles, more than routines, more than even memory itself, staying mentally alive has everything to do with how open we are to life as it continues to unfold. Openness is not just about tolerating new things. It's about embracing them. Embracing new ideas, new people, new ways of thinking. It's about recognizing that no matter how much we've lived, there is still more to learn, still more to feel, still more to understand. And that mindset, that spirit, it keeps the mind youthful in ways nothing else can. I've met people in their 40s who already seem locked away, stuck in their ways, unwilling to shift their thinking, quick to dismiss anything unfamiliar. And I've met people in their 90s who are still asking questions, still laughing at jokes they've never heard, still willing to say, "I didn't know that, tell me more." That's the kind of person I want to be, the kind who keeps unfolding. Openness is not weakness. It doesn't mean we have no convictions or that we simply go along with everything. What it does mean is that we leave a little room to be surprised, room to grow, room to see the world and ourselves differently than we did yesterday. Being open also means being willing to unlearn. And unlearning, in many ways, is harder than learning. It means letting go of assumptions, letting go of ideas that once made us feel safe but no longer serve us. It means having the humility to say, "I used to think one way, but I've changed." There is strength in that. A closed mind becomes rigid, bitter, isolated. It turns inward and shuts out the world. And that's when mental decline starts to set in, not just in memory, but in spirit. But an open mind, it breathes, it reaches, it invites life in. So welcome conversations that challenge your thinking. Read things you might not immediately agree with. Listen to younger generations with respect, not just nostalgia. Try a new food, a new hobby, a new route on your walk, even if it feels silly. You don't need to change who you are, you just need to stay curious about who you're still becoming. Because that's what openness really is, a quiet belief that the story isn't finished yet. And the moment we stop being open is the moment we begin to dim. But when we remain open to new love, new lessons, new laughter, we stay alive inside. And isn't that the whole point? If you want to stay mentally sharp, don't just think harder, live deeper. Because true clarity doesn't come from filling your mind with noise, it comes from engaging with life. With presence, with purpose, with wonder. Stay connected to people, to memories, to the world around you. And stay curious, not because you need answers, but because you honor the questions. Speak honestly. Because your truth, shared kindly, keeps the heart and mind aligned. Learn often, especially when it feels uncomfortable. Rest when needed, and honor the wisdom in stillness. Create, whether it's art or meals or simple moments of joy. Reflect on where you've been, what you've felt, and who you're still becoming. And above all, never stop growing, because aging doesn't have to mean fading. It can mean rising into a wiser, fuller, more aware version of yourself. A version with stories worth telling, with clarity earned through years of reflection, with a mind still vibrant because it's still curious. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to keep up. You just need to stay engaged, to stay open, to stay awake to the beauty of the life you're still living. Your mind is still yours. Use it. Love it. Feed it gently and often, and it will stay with you clearer, brighter, and stronger than you ever imagined. Thank you for spending a few quiet moments with me today. If this story spoke to you, I hope you'll carry its message with you and maybe share it with someone who needs to hear it too. There's so much wisdom in the voices of those who've lived, loved, and learned. And here on this channel, we honor that, one story at a time. If you'd like to hear more reflections, life lessons, and heartfelt truths from our elders, I invite you to like and subscribe and join our growing circle of listeners. Until next time, take care of yourself, hold your loved ones close, and never stop listening for wisdom in the quiet places.